I knew I was going to have to make this video. I told you last week how this was going to go. I told you we could lose to City and that the fan base and the media was going to go nuclear. The thumbnails got red arrows all over it, and sack the manager would be the narrative by everyone. Tactics threads and videos by people who honestly I don't really think have a real understanding of what's happening, telling you how Amorim is failing. It's all a circus, really. But if we honestly want to know why the season hasn't started well, we gotta stop pretending this is a 2-minute problem with a 2-minute fix. It's not. It's years in the making, and we're still only halfway through doing what should have been done from the start. A full rebuild. Stay with me because in this video, I'm going to show you clips from the City game that explains exactly what's going on. I'm even going to do something I have never done or explained in my previous tactics videos. I'll be talking about our defensive shape to try and help everyone here understand how full of shit the narrative is about our shape and how we get overrun in midfield. And later, I'll show you sequences where we build up perfectly into the final third and still throw it away with one bad choice. Whether you're Amorim out or in, you'll want to see this because he might get sacked in a couple of months and the next manager will have to deal with this shit. Here's the truth everybody knows, but so conveniently forgets when we get into slumps like this. Because it isn't sexy and fans feel powerless when it comes to solving this problem. The squad needed stripping down to the studs, not a 4-player summer transfer window. We needed a complete overhaul. New foundations, new spine, new decision makers on the pitch. Over the summer, we didn't even do half of that. We patched, we compromised, we negotiated with the same problems. And now we act shocked when those problems show up on the match day with the same players. And yes, this is where names come in. Bruno Fernandes, and he's not alone here, but he is the headline for a large point. The biggest mistake our manager made, for me, was not his shape or his tactics. The biggest mistake he made was not letting Bruno go to Saudi for big money. His over-reliance on Bruno will be one of the main reasons why this project will probably fail this season. But other than Bruno, there are players who needed recycling or replacing a season ago, and they're still central. Not because they're bad players in a vacuum, but because profiles matter. If you want to play a certain way, if you want reliable patterns and cold-blooded decision-making under pressure, you need a certain catalog of traits across your roster. That's style of play 101. Fit the parts to the system, not pray the system heals the parts. Look, we just lost to City. The easy story is tactics. Why don't we press higher? Why don't we sit lower? Why don't we man mark their midfield or double their wide men or invent a new formation mid-game? Or my favorite one-liner, which basically right away tells me whoever is saying this doesn't have a full understanding of the system. Amorim's 3-4-3 gets overrun in midfield. It simply isn't true. If the roles are executed, it works out fine. Here's how the system works out of possession. This image shows you the pitch divided into 5 lanes vertically. The right center back and left center back are responsible for covering opposition players who are in their lane. They're supposed to step forward as far as needed to get tight on the opponent, dropping behind our central midfielders or anyone arriving to create an overload. The job is to read the game, step into that lane and delete the free man. So in this example, Luke Shaw would have to step up and cover this opposing player in blue. And if that player makes his way to the other side, then Luke would drop back and Euro would step up to pick him up. Let's look at some actual in-game examples of this. And some of these will be long sequences so you can see how this works. Here you can clearly see Lenny Euro has stepped up way past midfield. The blue lane is Lenny's and the red lane here is Shaw's. There's no opposing player in Shaw's lane, so he stays back on the back line. After the pass, you see Lenny's man cross the field, and Lenny starts to retreat as the man is no longer in his lane. This is where Shaw needs to be awake to the threat and step up into his lane early so the midfielders don't need to help him. Shaw is a little late, which drags a midfielder in there. I would also argue that Bruno is out of position and should be on Rodri, so that there's no chance at a pass back to Rodri. In my preview video I made before this game, I told you guys I don't want their midfielders to touch the ball that much. Let their defenders try to make those line-breaking passes because their midfielders can hit great passes like Rodri does here. Here's another sequence where there's an opposing player, I believe it's Foden, behind Bruno in Lenny's lane. And you'll see Lenny show up and get close to him to prevent a pass into him. By the way, if you pay attention, here we're in a 4-2-3-1. Our shape changes by the minute, which is why Ruben keeps telling you that the shape doesn't really matter. It's fluid and changes based on the game's needs. We did a good job here with our shape, and the ball goes backwards. Rodri has no option, and you can see we've gone into a 5-2-3. But although there are only two midfielders, can you really say that we are overrun in midfield? Lenny and Shaw can easily step up at any time when the need arises and negate between the line balls. You can clearly see they have their lanes covered. There's no real chance of the midfield being overrun. That argument makes no sense to me at all. If you don't agree with me and you want to leave something in the comments, please mention the game and the minute that it happens, and I will gladly show you how it was a mistake by a player making an obviously bad decision instead of an actual tactical flaw of the 3-4-3. The 3-4-3 isn't shorthanded, it's conditional. It works when those outside center backs step decisively to shut down the lane, not when they retreat and ball watch. It works when the center mids track runners. So when we concede ground there, it's not the shape being overrun, it's a decision not made or made too late, and that's the theme you'll keep seeing in this video, decisions. Now, can we all just go back and watch every goal we conceded this season and look for how it fell apart? Believe me, you will find that it was always due to some sort of player error, not a fundamental flaw in the system, as most pundits, YouTubers, and other tacticals will tell you. The only fundamental flaw here is that we have a weak goalkeeper when it comes to set pieces. We have midfielders who can't sense dangerous situations. We also have old and tired legs, or just outright slow legs, everywhere on the pitch. And we have blame shifters like Bruno on the first goal. And we have an abundance of stupid decisions at key times of a match. Look, actually, I'd like to get right into that topic like right now. Our buildup isn't that bad, but we've created the most chances in the league, but we haven't scored. So let me show you how and why our players don't finish them. In this example, you clearly see the diamond shape I've told you about time and time again in my old tactics videos. And you clearly see Mbeumo is in that area we want to get the ball into most of the time, where he would receive with his back to goal and either pass it on or turn with it. But pay attention here and look at this picture. My favorite player is Lenny right now, and he makes the dumb decision to pass to the one guy here I would not trust with the ball with that many opposing players around him. He passes it to Ugarte, who gives it right back to him because he had no choice. In modern day football, guys, when the defense is set to press, one of the most common triggers is when a midfielder passes it back to a center back. So essentially, when Euro passed it to Ugarte, who had no space and basically had to pass it back to him, we voluntarily invited City to press us. That was dumb. Thankfully, we get back into our shape and regain control after a couple of better passes. We now have a triangle, which helps us get past City's line into Bruno. He quickly gets it to Mazraoui, and you start to see Mbeumo waiting there. This forms a new triangle with the goal to get the ball to Mbeumo. Maz can't get it to him, so he passes it to Bruno, who can easily get Mbeumo the ball. Once Mbeumo turns, we have the next triangle in the middle of the pitch, like I've talked to you guys about in past videos. We will always have a triangle in the middle of the pitch, and you can clearly see our wingbacks are free. Both sides are wide open. We should be creating a hell of an opportunity, or at least a cross to our big man. But we also have the option of Mbeumo playing the pacey Sesko through with his left foot. This is the kind of situation managers and players dream of. And Ruben's system provides this type of situation a dozen times a game, and we keep f***ing it up. Let me show you where we went wrong on this one. Mbeumo plays this one out wide to Dorgu, who doesn't take the early cross, which is fine. I'll skip ahead to this part where Bruno has the ball and he passes it to Dorgu, who is now in the box. Guys, one of Ruben's fundamental things to do is to run to the end line and make the cutback pass to the penalty spot. I've told you this time and time again. If you're new to the channel, you need to watch some of my old videos like this one, which I'll link to the end of this video. Let's look at this picture. Dorgu has an open lane to the end line. There's no one there, but he decides to turn into trouble and the play is over. It's dead. The whole thing is worthless if that's what you decide to do when the lane is wide open in front of you and you decide to make a move to behind you. How are you not aware of how open in front of you is? Here's another missed opportunity of the same kind, but on the other side with Mazraoui. We have a nice triangle on the edge of the box, and Bruno slips Mazraoui in. Yes, the touch is a touch behind, the pass is a touch behind him, but his first touch is trash, and you can clearly see in the box we have the advantage centrally with our players ready for a cross. But Maz has a pathetic touch. His attempt is bad, and then he falls down. I said last season when everyone was singing his praises that he is not the right fit for the kind of player for us, man. He's too slow for the Premier League, in my opinion. Here's another example of our buildup. Luke Shaw has the ball, and we've got most of the City players dragged to one side of the pitch, so the big switch is on. Luke hits it perfectly to Mbeumo. Now here, Mazraoui has no excuse for being lazy because it's only the 3rd minute of the second half. He has two choices to make. He can run straight to the opponent's box, making the opponent's defensive players have to make a decision on who's going to track him. And that would open up space for a pass to Ugarte if it was needed. Or he can overlap, giving Mbeumo more options. What does he do instead? He jogs like he's never played professional football before. Then it's like he suddenly wakes up and realizes what he was supposed to be doing. But now obviously everyone on the planet knows where he's going, so it's worthless. The defenders easily switch assignments and Mazraoui ends up falling again. Is he the new Rasmus Højlund now? Is he going to be the one on the ground every time he attacks or he gets touched by the opposing players? Here's another example of a dumb decision-making sequence. The goalkeeper passes to Ugarte, who can easily play to Luke Shaw since he's facing him. And then Luke can play it up to Dorgu or hold it. But what does this genius try to do? He tries to turn and pass in the other direction, which ends up the pass being slow, and De Ligt ends up in trouble and eventually has to turn the ball away and give City an almost very, very easy goal. You can't make this stuff up, guys. These guys aren't even good enough to play in the direction they're facing most of the time, yet they still try to play the tougher option or angle. This is pure stupidity. This doesn't take high football IQ at all. This is common sense, guys. Here's another great build-up example. Our box shape funnels City's players to the midfield of the pitch so we can easily find Mazraoui in space out wide. And we're going to freeze the ball here and look at this image, guys. You can see right away Ruben Amorim is pointing to zone 18, which is the corner flag up there. Again, if you've watched my past videos, you know this diagonal run tactic to zone 16 and 18. But let me explain what should happen in this instance that Ruben himself is crying out for. Mbeumo is supposed to make a diagonal run to zone 18, which would drag the center back away from the center of the pitch a couple of yards. At the same time, Šeško makes a curved run in front of his marker and takes that newly open space where Mazraoui could feed him the ball, and he would easily be able to carry that ball into the box. This was Ruben Sporting FC's bread and butter. In these situations, they would make diagonal runs and open up space for Gyökeres to get a ball that he could carry into the box, and he got a lot of goals that way. Look, Mbeumo's one of our newest players, and I do love him, but that was a dumb decision. Mbeumo was going to the center of the space himself because he wanted to create an opportunity for himself, so he runs into the same space that Šeško is supposed to be occupying, which basically leaves Mazraoui with no options. This is really, really dumb because I know for a fact that this must be a play that they worked on in training, and this was something that I'm sure Amorim and his coaches have told them to do in these situations because, like I said, I've seen it done at Sporting time and time again. The diagonal runs to the zones, is something that's just normal. It opens up space for the middle and also gives the player with the ball an option to pass it to you in that zone and gets us deeper down the field. But anyway, like I said, Mazraoui has no choice but to go with a switch to the other side. Ahmad goes to Dorgu. Finally, Dorgu makes the cross on the ground instead of in the air, where we have our high leaping striker, which I also don't understand. Why are the crosses on the ground when we have him? Here's an image of that same play from a different point of view, and you can clearly see Ruben pointing to where he wants Mbeumo to go. This would have been an easy chance or maybe even a penalty if Šeško got touched in the box from behind after running past his marker, guys. Let's not act like this is a brand new pattern either. These are largely the same players who finished 15th last season, bar 2 players from that sitting game. And we expect an overnight transformation because a preseason happened and a couple of new faces walked in. Come on! Habits don't vanish because the calendar flipped. Habits are broken by competition for places, by quality arriving that lifts the floor, by the fear that if you don't execute, somebody else will. That's what a real rebuild does. It doesn't just add, it raises standards and removes the excuses. Look, let me be clear. I'm not absolving the manager of everything. He picks the team, he sets the scheme, he lives by his choices. But right now, the discourse is upside down. We're obsessing over Plan B when Plan A hasn't had the manpower to reach Plan A's potential. If your midfielder can't reliably receive on the half turn, you don't magically gain fluency by rolling the dice on a new shape. If your forward doesn't naturally combine, flipping the shape into a 4-3-3 doesn't invent chemistry. The best managers are multipliers of quality. They can't conjure it from thin air. What does quality look like? It looks like the routine stuff down at like a relentless level. The simple pass that resets the structure instead of the panic decision. The pass to the third man that breaks a press without drama. The runner who sacrifices himself to open space for his teammate. Or the forward who bends his line to stay onside because he's checked over his shoulder 3 times in 5 seconds. Those are habits. Those are standards. Those are recruitment outcomes that you have to get. You have that and suddenly your tactics work. Why? Because the decisions at the micro level align with the macro plan. And I know some people will say, but look at Spurs. They change managers and they've been winning. Yeah, a new manager bounce is real. So is caffeine, and that doesn't mean you're going to sleep better at night. What I mean to say is if we rip this up now, we're back on the carousel. New philosophy, new terminology, new excuses. Same players making the same decisions under pressure. That's not a plan, that's just noise. A full rebuild done properly is 2 to 3 windows minimum, guys. The first window, you identify and remove the non-fitters, add 2 or 3 core profiles who instantly fit your, lift your floor. And we just did that this last summer. The second window, we add the complementary profiles that make your first wave play better. Roles that amplify, not merely duplicate. We need the midfielders and the faster center backs. And then the third window, you go for the match winners who turn stalemates into wins. Where we are right now, are we stuck between like window 1 and 2, arguing about the decor when the plumbing isn't finished? And yes, some of you are thinking, but we spent money. Spending isn't rebuilding, allocating is. If your spend doesn't convert into decisive actions on the pitch, it's just numbers on a ledger, guys. Watch our games with this lens. Did that signing increase the number of correct decisions per possession? That's the KPI. Correct decisions per possession. We haven't moved that needle enough. That's why we look the same against better teams. The margins for error shrinks and our decision errors multiply. The window from 2 summers ago was a bad one, guys. Other than Lenny Yoro, the other players did not move that needle enough. This past window headed by this manager was the first good window we've had in a long time. Let's go back to the unwanted point. And what I mean by that is 2 windows ago and 3 windows ago, we kept buying players that were actually unwanted by the bigger teams. They were unwanted by the teams they play for. When you build a squad out of players other top teams didn't prioritize, you inherit why they didn't prioritize them. Maybe it's pace over 5 yards. Maybe it's scanning frequency. Maybe it's that they can do 5 things really well, but you need the 2 they don't do well. At a big club, those margins are microscopic. Pretty good is a liability and not a foundation. If you're confused right now, I'm talking about players like Casemiro. I'm talking about players like Ugarte, like De Ligt, like Mazraoui, all players that weren't wanted by their clubs anymore. These players were barely getting playing time before they joined us. And then we act shocked when pretty good looks miles off against the very teams who set the standard that we say we want to meet. I'll say it again, that doesn't mean that these players do everything wrong, but they definitely lack something. So what now? For me, it's simple and difficult at the same time. 1, we got to complete the rebuild. Stop half measures. If a profile doesn't fit where we're going, move on respectfully, decisively, and finally. Replace sentiment with standards. If that means rotating out names we've defended for years, so be it. The badge is bigger than the biographies. 2, we got to recruit for decisions, not just highlights. The data actually exists for this, and the scouts exist. You can quantify scanning. You can quantify one-touch tendencies, progressive supporting runs, pass selection under pressure. Recruit players who make good choices 10 out of 10 times in minute 40, not like the same way they do in minute 4. That's how you stabilize performance. And then 3, protect the manager long enough to let the structure normalize, guys. Not because he's perfect, but because swapping him now teaches the worst lesson, that you can outsource discipline to vibes. Let him stand or fall on a squad that actually reflects his ideas. Judge him when the pieces match. Judge him hard, but do it when the test is fair. Right now, it's like judging a race car driver who isn't winning while giving him an inferior car to drive, a broken car. And then 4, set internal competition on fire. Nobody should feel undroppable. If your touches consistently kill attacks, then you sit. If your pressing trigger is at the wrong time, then you sit. If you don't track back, then you sit. Make the shirt heavy again, not by nostalgia, but by consequences. This is where I think Ruben Amorim might be at fault, because I don't think Bruno should be starting every game. He is the captain, he should set the example, but I fear Ruben doesn't believe he has a player in the squad who can come in and perform in that position. And then lastly, refrain the fan conversation, guys. We're not one clever manager away from being fixed. We are a medium-term project that keeps trying short-term solutions. The next time we lose a big game, and we will, ask, did we execute our decisions better than last week? If the answer is yes, we're fine, we're moving. But if the answer is no, don't hide from it by yelling tactics in a timeline. And let me end on this, because it matters for morale. You can both criticize and believe. You can say this isn't good enough and still understand why it isn't good enough. I'm not here to sugarcoat anything. The start has been poor, the City game hurt, the table does not lie. But the way out isn't a search bar for a new manager. It's finishing the job we've been avoiding. Rebuild the squad properly with players who were wanted by other top teams, with profiles that increase the number of correct decisions we make per minute of football. Do that, and the tactics will suddenly look clever. Do that, and we'll stop living week to week on hope and start living season to season on standards. Until then, expect inconsistency. Expect flashes and breakdowns. Expect the media to rewrite the script every 7 days. But don't let the noise convince you the root cause is a tactics board. It's not. It's the roster. It's the rebuild we paused halfway through. It's the decision making we still haven't bought enough of. So if you're asking me why this season hasn't started well, here's my answer. Because we tried to sprint on a half-built leg. Because we kept players we should have thanked and moved on. Because recruitment 2 and 3 summers ago was weak, and this summer was only halfway to what we needed. Because beyond Lenny Yoro, the market told us the truth about the players we signed. They were available for a reason. And because changing the manager won't change someone's first touch, won't change a passing choice, won't change a run that never happened, Only the right players can do that. Finish the rebuild, then judge the rest. That's the order. And until the club follows it, we'll keep reliving the same conversation after every game and after every season, wondering why it sounds so familiar. It's because it is. Guys, I'll be live for the game this Saturday. Come watch it with me. We'll do the watch along. I'm out.